Okay, so we're going to look at the question of whether good ethics leads to good business, and I think it's a good idea just to start with our key question, which is essentially, is it true that being moral does that lead to? Is it true that it leads to essentially higher profits? If you're going to try and convince business people to be moral, then you need to speak in their language. Remember, there's this fundamental divide really between business and ethics. On the one side, I'm not. By the way, I know I've called this definitions, but I'm not really defining things here. I'm rather going to talk about their aims. For business, the aim is profit, and for ethical considerations, the aim is the good, be that good actions or good outcome or whatever, depending upon your normative ethical framework. So there are two answers to the question of whether being moral leads to higher profits. Yes and no. Let's start with the no answer. Now, we've looked at Milton Friedman before. I'm going to cover a few things that we've already covered, and then I just want to talk about one other thing in a bit more detail. This is again from his article, "The Social Responsibility of Business is to Increase Its Profits." And Friedman thinks fundamentally that the only duty of a corporate executive, so someone who's making decisions in a business, is to produce higher profits. That's it, because they are employed by the shareholders, right? So a corporate executive, remember what a corporate executive is? Someone who is making big decisions in a company, uh, is employed by shareholders. That's a very interesting attempt at an S there. Shareholders. And so the sole kind of duty then is to increase the thing that the shareholders care about, the thing that they've employed the corporate executive to do, which is, of course, increase profit. So your only duty as a corporate executive is to the shareholders who pay your salary. But Friedman, now this is the stuff we've already covered, but Friedman also considers kind of the dangers of ethics as window dressing. So one of the answers to this question is that whilst being moral doesn't necessarily lead to higher profits, appearing moral definitely does seem to, right? So appearing to be moral. So let's put this in my definition color actually. Window dressing. What he means by that is appearing to be moral. Now, appearing to be moral, he thinks is actually a very dangerous game to play. He doesn't have any particular objection because he thinks that, if it does increase profits, then it's allowed. But he does point out a kind of a long-term danger for businesses. And the danger is that we might convince people that making a profit is bad. He's kind of very concerned with socialism um, or kind of the idea that every company would ultimately look and behave like a charity. He doesn't want people to think that actually just going out there and trying to make money is a bad thing. And if you use kind of ethics as window dressing, then that is the impression that you're giving. So he says that actually might be in the short term very useful to you, but in the long term, it's pretty dangerous. Um, okay, so that's the one side. That's the profit only matters, therefore ethics doesn't. That's Friedman's perspective. Now, on the other side, I've chosen a scholar who writes in kind of applied business ethics, um, and she writes in the mode of the stakeholder idea. Remember, someone like Friedman thinks that the only person that matters is the shareholders. Okay, whereas so those are the people who own the business and take the profits. Whereas a stakeholder theory is one that thinks that everybody who is influenced by the business matters. So this is Anne Mills. And Anne Mills thinks that yes, good ethics does lead to good business. And this is in her article, Business Ethics, Academic Discourse, or Good Business. And she argues very much that it is good business. Her main reason for thinking this is that profit needs trust. Now, that's actually quite a big claim to make. Why is it that profit needs trust? Well, she writes, being ethical can also be profitable to enterprise. In other words, doing the right thing can also increase your bottom line, can increase your profits. And she thinks this because, and this is the important bit, obviously, um, she thinks this because of kind of modern developments, technology. She says, look, if you look at modern technology, what it's enabled us to do is interact with people a lot quicker, and therefore the decision that's being made doesn't need to be made by the end of the week, it needs to be made immediately. And so you can't refer everything to your manager, who refers it to their manager, and so on. You've got to make a much quicker decision, which means uh, kind of two things. There have been fewer managers, so the hierarchy in a business has reduced. And also, very importantly, more autonomy for the workers. Do you remember what autonomy means? So self-direction is what autonomy means. Now, if there's more autonomy for the workers, it means there's less oversight. There are fewer managers to kind of watch what the workers are doing. And therefore, kind of the conclusion of all of this, she argues, is that trust is required. So trust in the employees is needed in order for the business to function properly. But, she argues, trust itself, this can only be made in a reciprocal manner. So, what does that mean? Well, it means that if if a business is going to trust its employees, then it needs to know that its employees are trusting it. Which means, of course, that it needs to behave ethically in order to generate trust and therefore profit. So a business needs to behave ethically in order to generate that trust, which generates the profits. Now that's an argument very much for the kind of good treatment of employees, but she thinks it also extends to stakeholders in the same way. The more trust that customers and the local community and so on have in the business, the more profit it will ultimately make. Okay, so those are our two answers to whether good ethics is good business. No for Milton Friedman, and yes for Anne Mills.